Absence of our chairman, Leanna Crosser, and our vice president, Arla, I'm going to go ahead and take the gavel until somebody shows up. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, and if you could rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Everybody.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve or amend the meeting agenda.
I make a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
Okay. Any discussion? Can you hear me down there, John?
Yeah.
Good. If there's no discussion, I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the agenda has been approved. And now we are at public comments on agenda items. Do we have anything, Jackie?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll move into student board member comments.
So, not a lot going on at the high school right now. We have ASB training coming up the 25th. And then, so we're going to train all the new ASB officers and all the leadership students. And then the next day, the 26th, we will have freshman orientation for all of the new 200 freshmen coming up to the high school. So that'll be fun. We're looking forward to that. Both will be pretty much an all-day event that day. So I'll start off probably at the training and then pop over to the picnic later that day and attend that.
That's awesome.
Other than that, we won't have anything else going on. We do have one video that we're going to make for freshman orientation that we're going to make for the freshmen, but that's pretty much all we're doing right now. Not a whole lot during summer.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, we are at the consent agenda, consent items. The administration recommends that the board of directors approve the consent agenda as presented or as modified at this meeting. So no modifications. So I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Madam Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as given.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All right, I'll call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I vote aye, and the motion passes. So now we are all the way over to the food service program presentation.
So our food service director, Nicole Ha, has a great video for you to watch, and she would like you to be prepared to ask questions. She intended to show it during the meeting today and take questions at that time, but had to go home ill this morning, and so we will put her back on the agenda in September. And I would like to just take a moment, since Nicole couldn't be with us, to introduce our new athletic director, Ray Bonnell, because Ray does have a couple things to make you aware of related to athletics.
Welcome.
Welcome. Hi, howdy. So yeah, I'm Ray Bonnell. I've taken over the athletic director position and dean of students at the high school. A lot of exciting things happening. There's just a lot that we're getting going, getting rolling now that we're kind of back to normal. Knock on wood. So football got started last night. Coach Rob Thomas is doing a great job creating a really tight-knit culture, a disciplined culture, and it's exciting to watch the kids buy in. Got 50 kids coming out, and they're working really hard, doing a great job. All the other sports start up on Monday. Numbers look pretty good. We're definitely recruiting boys tennis players. We need some boys tennis players, so if you know anybody. We need boys tennis players. And then also, we worked in the off season at building a swim and dive, and bringing it back, really, bringing back a swim and dive team. So we're gonna work with in a co-op with Bremerton High School. So that got approved by WIAA. So long as there's no objections here, we can move forward with that. If there's any objections, certainly you can bring them up now, and we can table the.
I think we leave that right in your corner to make that decision.
All right. Well, then we have a girls swim and dive team and
Yeah.
more boys.
All right.
So
I recommend swimming to anyone.
Absolutely. Out here with all the lakes and with Hood Canal, it's almost borderline required, right? So excited about that, working with Bremerton. I've got a really good relationship with their athletic director, Amber Plummer-Borowski, and everybody's excited, everybody's on board and ready to go. So we need to get some girls out next week, and so we'll be spreading the word and getting that going. Other big events, all the football, soccer games, and we're getting volleyball, basketball, all the sports in the gym are all going to be live streamed online. So that's an exciting deal. Through NFHS, so they've got a whole movement where they want to live stream every athletic event in America, and they're working on it. So we've got the cameras installed, and we'll be pushing out a lot of information on that as everything gets confirmed and then make certain all the technology works. Right now, all the technology works in the stadium. Still working on getting it fine-tuned in the gym.
So will you be doing I'm sorry, John.
Okay.
Will you be also live streaming baseball and softball?
That's a goal.
Okay.
We have the software capabilities. We need to get the hardware. So whether it's eventually we'll be getting a GoPro. We're working through the league and through NFHS to make that happen so that we're not having to purchase all of this, since it's their goal and we just happen to support it, and we'll deal with that.
What is NFHS?
So NFHS is the National Federation of High School Sports, or high school sports
Okay.
federate. And so it's our overarching governing body.
Okay.
And
John, did you have a question?
Yep.
Well, so how's that work? Will this, I'm guessing, this enables anybody that wants to in Belfair that's got a computer to watch one of the games?
You could be on vacation in Hawaii and watch the game live stream. It's anywhere in the world.
That's cool.
So what we have is 2 cameras have been installed. They're called Pixelot is what it's called, and it's an artificial intelligence capable deal. And what it does is it automatically it follows the ball around and streams the game. Eventually, when we get the production department, in our CTE department, up and running, and we start to understand the capabilities, we'll be able to have a broadcaster just as if you were watching a college sporting game
Oh, wow.
or whatever.
This sounds like something that we really should publicize and is a plus to the community, and they should know about it.
Absolutely. That's a big thing that it just got confirmed live a couple weeks ago. We attempted to live stream the graduation. That was our first run with it. We have to make some adjustments to how that went down, if that's not an understatement. But I've been working with the Pixelot people to identify some software that we can actually have a little bit more control and make it have a better user experience on the output on that back end of it. So that's all work in progress.
All the more we can do to integrate ourselves with the community is a plus. I think this reaches out to people who wouldn't have any ordinary contact with the school district.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it would widen the interest of the community in our school district.
No, that is one of my, and even when I interviewed for the position, that was one of my primary focuses, is to utilize the draw that is athletics to broaden the scope and the vision in just the presence of North Mason School District. So that's a big one.
Will we be able to use that same technology for the performances at the high school?
That's part of it's just a matter of getting it all set in, and
Okay.
if we get cameras into it, we can get it set up onto the page, and it's just a matter of understanding the steps required with the hardware and integrating it with the software.
Okay.
So once we do that, we should be able, I foresee every event we do we should be able to get it out there. It also opens up for, sponsorship opportunities and
Oh,
things
of
like that,
course.
help fund things.
Yeah.
Right. So that's a big one. And then the last big one is a work in progress, but it's looking very, very, very promising. A lot of the Olympic League and a lot of the state has moved to online ticketing. We, hopefully, as of next week sometime, we should be able to provide online ticketing as an option, not the exclusive. You can still come to the games and pay with, get entrance with pay with your cash or whatever. But I've been working with GoFan, and GoFan offers basically a digital ticket. And you can purchase it online, just like if you were going to a Seahawks game or something like that, and you present it at the gate, and then we can take our tickets that way. So online, contact-free, nice and easy. You can buy your whole season up front at the beginning of the year, and we're looking into season pass options and things like that as well.
Great.
So that was a big development actually today. Actually, just a couple minutes ago, I ran over here, tried to tell somebody.
He was very excited.
Yeah, I'm a little. There's a couple projects that I'm really excited about, and that's one of them.
Oh, good.
Like swim and dive, and then we're broadening and redoing the cross country path. So I think I don't know a whole lot about cross country. I can be honest with that. I mean, obviously, it's what it is. But I've been working with Paula Grandy and our cross country coach, Miss Dygeson, Miranda, and she used to run on this beautiful path out here, out in the woods, and she took me through it, and we've been working on widening it and making it really a premier cross-country path. So I'm excited about that as well. A lot going on in the last couple of weeks, but we're knocking them out, and really excited. We got a lot of kids signed up for fall sports. Again, just spread the word about boys tennis. We really need some boys tennis and some swimmers, because that's brand new, right? So.
Okay.
Really quick, I have one last question about the streaming. So is there any way to get the students involved in this, like either AV club or class, or will it just be mostly done by AI?
So the beauty of the Pixelot system and the direction that NFHS has gone is we don't have to, but we can. So we can actually incorporate multiple cameras into it and have a full-on production with sideline cameras, interviews, live people talking, play-by-play announcer, bring in guest speakers, break to commercial, like all sorts of stuff.
So that would be students then?
I'm not going to pay anybody for that, so yeah, that would be a student thing, and it's a great opportunity to learn.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. Great, thank you.
I've seen that through travel ball. And
Exactly.
They're using the same thing, and you got a commentator going, and they're interviewing
nice.
kids after, and
Mhm.
it's
That's so
really,
cool.
really cool.
Yeah, we're trying to bring the game to the big time out here, especially with the foreseen growth that's coming. It's going to be exciting to be on the front edge of it rather than trailing everyone else. So I'm excited. We've hit the ground running. Been going at this for about a month now, and just really getting after it, and excited to see where we head out. So.
Great. Well, we're really happy to have you.
Oh, I'm excited.
Looking forward to
Stay
it.
the
Thank you.
course. Stay the course.
We got it. All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're at the food service program presentation, or?
Yes, so we're skipping that, but
Okay.
there is a video for you to watch. You can either watch it before, open the link and watch it before we come back to next month's meeting.
Oh,
and
okay.
Nicole will be here, or she will also go over it that night.
Okay,
Okay?
let's do that. All right, so now we're at the resolution 10G22 redistricting director districts.
Yes, and as you'll remember, at our last meeting, we presented the report from our company that did this work for us on redistricting. And as you saw, there was very little change in each of your districts. It does not affect any of you. You all still live within the new recommended districts that distribute our students more evenly, or our voters more evenly among the 5 districts. So it is my recommendation that we adjust the districts so that they're more evenly distributed in response to the most recent census, and that's what this resolution is about.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve and adopt Resolution 10G22 redistricting director districts as presented.
Go ahead.
I'll put forward a motion to resolution 10G22 redistricting director districts.
Okay. Any discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Resolution is adopted and approved. And there is the 22-23 budget.
Okay, well, good evening. Hello, everyone. So, everyone knows who I am. I'm Dan King. I'm the Director of Business and Finance in North Mason. Very excited to be doing the work that I'm doing. I'm excited to hear that you're going to do ASB training with the new students that are involved in ESB, Morgan? That's
It'll be
excellent.
fun. Yeah, we'll see how it
That's
is. It may be a bit of a doozy, but it'll be fun.
So I'm happy to present to you the annual budget for fiscal year 22-23, starting with student enrollment, looking at our projection. Now I've included on there on the left this past school year's student enrollment. Our average for the year was 2,249. We ended the year a little bit less than that, but our budget for the year was 2,210. So for 22-23, this coming school year is about to begin. We're budgeting for 2,260. So that's an increase of 50 over last year. And as you can see going forward, you can see that increase each year. 2025-26 is 100 students over last school year. Now, this is a projection. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know for sure exactly what we're going to have. But our school district has worked with an agency, Flow Analytics, and they did a demographic study. And they gave us some projections with low, medium, and high numbers of increases in student enrollment. And these numbers actually are the between low and medium or middle. They're pretty conservative actually. And you know, as everyone can see, there's a lot of growth in the area with housing and apartments being built and that sort of thing. So that's what we're going with right now. That's about a 4.5% growth in this between 2022 and 2026. But with Flow Analytics, the high is like almost 18%. So you can see we're being very conservative still. Okay, so moving on, we're going to look at the different funds, our 5 funds, beginning with the general fund. We're beginning with a fund balance of $4,445,628, and you can see what we're budgeting for our revenues and expenditures there. There is some transfer out to our debt service fund, and according to the budget that was put in place, it does show that our ending fund balance is down a bit, but it's still within our policy of having a fund balance ending between 8 and 10%, so we're still within that. Going on to our capital projects fund, we don't really have anything coming in other than earned interest in our investments, our investment earnings. So that's why you don't see a large revenue there. And we have some projects that we're doing this year. So unless things change, that's where we're going to end up. Next, please. Our debt service fund fund balance is at $2,179,452, and the revenue sources for this are through local property taxes, timber excise tax transfers, and general fund transfers. And the expenditures really are going towards that principal and interest towards non-voted debt. And moving on to our next one, our transportation vehicle fund. We do have some new buses that are going to be arriving in October. And once those arrive, you know, we have to pay for them, so you can see where that money is going. But it's pretty exciting to be getting 4 new school buses in October, November.
Oh, 4?
Mm-hmm.
Big ones?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yep.
How can we afford it? If they up the prices yet?
Well, you know, I think back to actually Super had a plan to make sure that we're able to afford new buses when we need to. We get funding from the state for depreciation on buses as they age. We get funding to replace those buses as they age out, as they depreciate. So
that's where if there's a change in cost, then the state picks it up.
No.
No?
Dan, since Maureen is here, she has some additional
That would be
information to
wonderful,
add to
yeah.
that.
Yeah, Maureen, please.
So the manufacturers of the buses, there is going to be a big price increase after September, but because we got our quote and we locked it in March, they are honoring that price
All right.
and sticking with that.
There we go.
So,
Very good.
You should blow your own horn more.
Well,
As it were.
I wasn't involved in that transaction at that time. I was still a principal at Belfair Elementary, so.
That was good. That was a very good move.
Okay, let's move on to the next one, the ASB. You can see the fund balance beginning there at 431, and it's going to be down a little bit, but that goes towards our clubs, cultural, athletic, and recreational events, and still pretty healthy there. And then moving on to the next one. Oh, that's our last slide. So I just wanted to end with this quote. A budget is more than just a series of numbers on a page. It is an embodiment of our values. And my goal really in my position, and I know Dana's too, and I work closely with Dana to talk about our budget every single day. It's really to think about how we can best use our precious resources, our fiscal resources, to make things better for students, to improve their learning experience, to improve their education, to make the education richer and more exciting for them, but also to help them to have higher levels of achievement. So I've been meeting with all the building administrators to talk about their building budgets. Now, their building budget is a small little slice because most of our budget really goes towards staffing. But even with staffing, thinking about hiring the best, most qualified staff, the most capable staff, and people with a lot of gifts and talents, that's important to us. But when it even comes down to like a building budget, I want to help principals and work with them to be strategic in how they use that to really maximize those resources to help students to learn better, to help them have some opportunities to help them have a more successful school year. All the building principals have what's called a CSIP, a Consolidated School Improvement Plan. And in that CSIP, they have goals for the school year and commitments. And so in my meetings with principals, I'm helping them look at their goals and commitments and helping them think about how they can use the resources they have to reach those goals. So really it's all about students. And that's where I feel where I can have an impact. And I know that all of our administrators want to do that. They're already doing that, but I just want to assist and help them to be even more strategic about it. So that was the end of our 4-year plan. We do have a resolution. Are we ready to move on to that, or?
We have a public hearing prior to that.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll
So,
wait for your lead.
okay, I'm going to adjourn the regular meeting to open up the public hearing. If anyone has any testimony or any thoughts or questions or whatever about this plan and the 22-23 budget. Hearing none, then I will open the meeting back up and we will look at the budget resolution adoption. So, the ESD has reviewed our budget and the 4-year budget plan, and we are now presenting it for board adoption through the approval of the budget resolution 13G22. If the board wishes to do so, the board may adopt the 22-23 North Mason School District budget. In the absence of testimony that demonstrates that the budget as presented conflicts with ER policies, the administration recommends that the Board of Directors approve and adopt the 22-23 North Mason School District budget and summary 4-year budget plan as presented in Resolution 13G22. And I'll entertain a motion.
Before that, I'm sorry if I may, I want to
Sure.
just make, I'm just known. This document was sent out previously last week, and I brought it to the superintendent's attention this morning that I had made an error on here. The form that was sent out last week included for these 5 funds that it had the revenue projected for or budgeted for next year, and I was supposed to put the expenditures, the appropriations.
Oh,
So we fixed that this morning.
okay.
And, you
And I
know,
think we all got that.
That is,
This
so
email.
this is the form that was revised
Okay.
today. So these are the budgeted expenditures for those 5 funds
Okay.
for this school year.
All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chairman, I move that we accept the 22-23 budget as has been presented and discussed.
Is there any discussion? All right, we have a motion to approve and adopt the 22-23 North Mason School District budget and summary 4-year budget plan as presented in Resolution 13G22. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Dan. A lot of hard work went into that. I could see it. So
You're welcome.
appreciate it.
I've had a lot of support.
Good.
So we can swing right in, Dan. We're on the update. And if
Okay.
you can do our status update for the current budget.
Okay, so we're going to do our budget status report for the month ending July 31, 2022. So these figures are not where we are today, August 18th, but 31 July. So beginning with our other funds, the capital projects fund balance at the end of July was $400,983, and that is $315 above last month. Our end fund balance in our debt service fund ended at $2,276,899. That's an increase of $57,727. Our ASB budget ended at $432,124, which is a slight decrease from the month prior of $8,573. And then our transportation vehicle fund and balance, ending fund balance at the end of July was $340,329. Looking at our enrollment, really no change, unless, there was a little adjustment of 1 student for our annual average. But because we didn't have enrollment in July, it's really the same as what we saw in June. We ended the year with 2,239 students, and our yearly average was 2,249. And we're going to move on to our general fund. I'm going to look at our dashboard beginning with our general fund revenues. So our total revenues to date was at 90.49%. We had projected to be at 95%. Our local sources, that's our levy and some other local dollars that come in. I know those numbers are maybe hard to see. If you remember last month, we talked about how this was at 801%, in that we did a budget extension by adding those local levy dollars to it of $1 million. That did make a huge difference in how this looks, but it's still showing that we're at 186.43% for our actual year-to-date. That's one thing that I need to look at closer and see, why that is. But really, it's related to how we budgeted our levy dollars, and at the beginning of last year, we didn't know what those were going to be when we made our budget last year. Our state sources actual year-to-date, at the end of July, we were at 89.73. We had projected that we'd be at 91.32, so we're pretty close to what we had anticipated. And for our federal sources, at the end of July, we were at 73.8, and we had projected that we would be at 81%. That's an area right now that our department, the business office, is working on, and I'm working on to make sure that we're claiming all those federal grant funds that we have coming to us. So we should see a difference as we complete all of those adjustments. Looking at our top 10 sources of revenue in the box to the left there, apportionment is our biggest one, of course. So at the end of July, we had $18,475,000 in apportionment, and we had $2,234,000 in our local property taxes. Just two of those tend to note there. Our revenues by source, the chart on the right, you can see that our local sources were about 2.5 million, which is about, if you look at 3 bars back in 1920, we're at about 5 million. But really, it makes sense that we're at 2.5 because we really just started collecting the levy in January. Our state revenues are slightly higher than last year, but we do, because last year with ESSER had some impacts on our staffing. But we're pretty close at about 25 million. And then with our federal, we're at about 5 million. And that's federal programs like ESSER, Title, and food services even included in that. So let's go to the next slide, to expenditures. And on the top left, our projected year-end fund balance is at 11.33%. And the next one over, you can see our total expenditures actual year-to-date as of July 31st was at 89.23 of our total budgeted for the year. We had projected we'd be at 91.37, so we're pretty close to that. Our salaries and benefits actual year-to-date is at 92.68% as of the end of July. We are projected to be at 90.86. And our basic ed actual year-to-date at the end of July was at 83.22. We had projected 86.39. Dropping down to our top 10 expenditures by program. Basic ed at $15,073,697. Also notable special education, $3,549,989, and then ESSER at $1,599,762. And moving over to the table on the right, expenditures by object, prior year-to-date versus current year-to-date as of the end of July. The first three are salaries and benefits for certificated and classified staff. So with salaries for certificated, we're close to 14 million there, you can see, which is comparable to the year before last. And then for our classified salaries, we're about 6 million right now at the end of July, which was comparable to the year before last as well. So it's kind of like we're getting back to normal, as, last year was really impacted by COVID and the way we had school happened last year, the year before last. Our supplies were a little over 2 million at the end of July, and our purchase services, that includes OT, SOPs, and some other special services which are hard to fill. So, for example, SOPs, speech language pathologists, are usually contracted, or some of them are contracted with us, not all of them. So that came to almost 4 million. And then let's move on to the next slide.
So real quick, what was on that last one, that purchase services, what caused that particular one to be over what was previously budgeted? Do we know if that's just the cost of what the employees were? Or is that just a rising cost with what the cost of doing business is right now?
That's
Cost
what,
of the contracts increased.
yeah.
Okay, okay.
So we contract with the different agencies that place or provide some human resources that we can then interview and hire to provide these services for us.
Gotcha.
And so that, yeah, the cost of contracting with them has gone up. But you can see, you know, in 1920, we're close to what we had expended in 1920. Okay, let's go on to the general fund month-end balances. In July, you can see that the current year projected is the solid line. And so in July, you can see the month-end balance at $3,455,452. But as we wrap up the year, and there's still more apportionment coming, we are projected to end at $4,210,000. We had budgeted $2,935,000, but I think that's a reflection of our levy not being known at the time, and that's why there's that big difference there. You can also see when you follow those lines that we followed the same trend as far as that pattern throughout the year, pretty consistently. And then let's go on to our last slide, which is our general fund summary. And really, I'd like us to focus on the right side, showing our current year-to-date revenues at the top. And you can see our total revenues at the end of July. We're at $32,597. We had budgeted $36,022,000. Now, last month, prior to that resolution being reflected in this, that $1 million budget extension, that said $35,022,000. So it's now showing that $1 million that we added. Our year-to-date percent of our budget, if you can slide a little bit over, Jackie, scroll over, yes, please. At the end of July, our revenues were about 90.49% of what we budgeted. And that's about a 9% increase over last month. And then when we look at our expenditures below, you can see at the end of July, our total expenditures were $33,161,000. Our budgeted is $36,760,000. So we have expended at the end of July 90%. And that is also about a 9% increase from the month prior. So that's it for our budget summary. Are there any questions?
So you're saying that our ending balance you project to be around 8%?
Well, that
That's next
4 million
Oh, that's next year.
is
Okay,
This year it's projected around 11%.
around 11.
okay.
Were there any surprises that you found?
Surprises that I found? Well, you know, this being new, and I'm curious and inquisitive.
That's right.
The whole thing is a surprise.
The whole thing's a
Everything
surprise.
was a surprise. Okay, I get
Well,
it.
no, I think what would be a surprise to me is, and Jackie, and it's not like a surprise like, oh no surprise, it's just a aha kind of surprise. And I think it's important to note, like if we look at our general fund expenditures slide again, and if you look at, go back a couple, Jackie. Yes, and go to the bar graph. Thank you. So you can see the first two bars are salaries, certificated and classified, and then the next one over the third one, the one in the middle, is benefits for all staff. You add that up, And it's $27 million. So you can just see that where most of our expenditures are going is in salaries and benefits. And so when I talk about, like, you know, with school buildings and what their building budget is, it's just a little fraction of our total budget. And then, you know, we have, you know, other expenses too, like utilities and things like that. And we have to keep the lights on and things. But really, it's staffing. That's what where most of our educational dollars are going to. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Our staff are highly trained, well qualified, and continuing to learn and make a difference for kids. But just to know, like, I think your general public might not realize how much of our total budget is going towards staffing. And I think, and that's not North Mason. That's how it is across the state and across the country.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. So kind of from your eagle's eye standpoint, we're about in line with where we should be.
That's my perception.
Okay? That we are comparable to other districts.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by comparable.
Percentage-wise.
It's open for
Percentage-wise,
Yes.
yeah. It's probably pretty similar.
We're not out of line by any
Well,
surprising degree with other districts.
let me kind of I think I know where you're going. Are we competitive as far as what we are offering folks with other districts, such as the one 10 minutes? I mean, that's where I'm.
We are as competitive as we can be with the current funding model from the state of Washington, that as long as our surrounding districts get 18% regionalization and we get 6%, and the rest of Mason County gets 0%, then we cannot be fully competitive with our neighbor districts.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, where you're going right now.
I wish that we had a transcript. Those last several sentences are exactly.
Well, it's recorded. You can go watch it again.
That's exactly what I need to know as a member of the board, and I need to have at my disposal when I talk to people.
Okay. All right, Dan, thank you very much.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Here,
Thank
here.
you.
Very complete.
Thank you, Dan.
Teaching and learning.
Yes, so I have 3 different documents I had Jackie share with you, and the first one is the letter that we received from Chris Reichdahl's office commending our transportation department, and I just wanted to publicly share this as well, that our transportation department is being recognized because for the past 2 years, the results in our district of the inspection of our school buses have been exceptional and outstanding. And we are congratulated, and our staff is congratulated on these results, supporting our students in their safety getting to and from school. And I'm so proud of our team. I want to make sure that we say that.
Good job.
Great job.
Let everybody down there know. I will let them know.
And if there were some additional, say, wise as serpents, harmless as doves award, you ought to get it for the buses. I mean, that was I'm sure that was a huge savings. And
Well-
very prudent leadership.
And I have to point out, because there will be an article probably in tomorrow's or sometime soon in the Sun about transportation issues that districts have dealt with over the past couple of years. And I need to really highlight our transportation department, because we are the only transportation department around that did not cancel routes on a regular basis last year. We did consolidate routes so that Maureen and her team worked really hard to figure out, with fewer drivers, how to get everybody to school every day in a consistent manner. But we did not cancel a single route. We did not have to hire outside buses to get kids to athletics or other opportunities, and including just to school. Our team, with fewer employees and fewer subs, were able to provide similar service, a little more crowded, than any other year. And I don't think there's another district that can say that, and I'm very proud of them.
Here, here, I think that's absolutely great. And we ought to have more publicity on, these are things that it seems to me that can make a difference in public attitudes and really give credit where, you know, credit is due. As a member of the Mason Transit Authority, I'm sensitive to bus issues, and I like us to be, the bus is running on time and all that kind of thing, but I just think that that is really remarkable, because I know the expenses that the Transit Authority is running into with respect to new buses, and to see that we have something locked in, that is a real plus. So kudos for splendid management.
Okay, thank
Can we
you.
move on?
Yes, next. So this is a new document that you will see. It is the final copy that we received back from the online submission tool that OSPI is using. And this, the Basic Education Requirements document, this is expanded from, a few years ago it was going into iGrants and saying, yes, we have the right number of minutes of school during the year, yes, we have the right number of days, yes, we have all the requirements that we're required to have for our kids for graduation, the end. This is now several hours to complete or think about the document, because they're asking for a lot more, as you can see by reading this. So I have to make sure that we're providing the for all the new requirements for things like elementary school science and how much time they're getting with that. Are we making sure that kids have high school and beyond plans, and that we are following up on that? How are we making sure that kids meet have the opportunities to have more than one pathway to graduation, and what pathways are we offering, and how do kids know about those? Talking about testing, and those include things like tests and dual credit and et cetera. So we have to talk about all the dual credit options that our kids have. What are we doing in CTE for our kids? How many course pathways to graduation in CTE do we offer at each of the 3 high schools that we have? How many, and then we're talking about other different things. So there are some questions having to do with some equity issues, and how are we doing the required Native American in Washington curriculum, and is that available in our schools? Do we have social emotional learning provided for as required by new laws in our school? Are we ensuring that every kid in our school district gets at least one of the arts in their year every year? All of those things we're now certifying in this report that used to be a much smaller one, and part of the requirement is that you guys all get to look at the report that we certified. And so this is the completed report on all of the state mandates, guaranteeing that all of the different individual days, October is Disabilities Month, in January we have Temperance Month, that all of those things are shared with students as appropriate, or there is curriculum and different
What did you say,
activities.
what month?
Temperance. Yes, you heard me right.
In January.
Temperance Month.
Yeah, that's a holdover law that's been in the Washington State requirements for a very long time, and we still have to do it. So we have to guarantee in this document now that we are meeting each and every one of those requirements. So I hope that's an explanation for why you got something unusual to look at. But I think it's really good because it makes us think, and as I'm going through it, I made a few notes. Okay, I got to remind the principals. I'm pretty sure they're doing this, but just in case. And, so it's a good thing.
So is the history of that, this is partly facetious, is the history of that we want to get our students so that they are not excessive drinkers?
I don't know, that RCW is actually older than I am, so.
Nice that they.
Is it older than I am?
I don't know. So anyway, that's that document.
Well, thank you for that and for all your hard work on that.
Yes.
Well,
How
and
many
thanks
pages
to our
is that?
staff for doing all of those things. It's not that many pages in the report, but the tool that they're using now is not in iGrants, so you can only answer like 2 questions, then it has to save it, and then go to the next set. So it's kind of a time-consuming process. And you can't, I had to go through it once because last year it asked different questions. And so I had saved that and I collected all the information thinking those were the questions I was gonna answer. Like it asked for more details last year about students that we gave graduation waivers to, and were they in this category of student or that category of student, and what kind of waiver did they get? And they didn't ask any of those questions this year. So I prepared all of that information, and then I went through, and then there were questions that I didn't have the answers to, so I had to make copies of it and then go get the answers and then come back and do it. So that was the process. But like I said, I think it's a really good one because it reminds us of some of the obscure requirements that we have.
Yeah.
And to make sure that those happen as well.
How many
So,
pages is this thing?
a lot.
From what I see, it's 9 pages and 86 questions.
Oh, it seems to me this would be very useful for people such as myself. If I had a sport jacket and had this 9 pages folded, and somebody has a thing about the public schools, let me show you some of the requirements that we have to meet.
I'm sure you can print it out, John.
Yes,
So
I think
let's
that
move
would
on
be
to
very.
inclusive education report.
Okay.
As you know, we're getting close to the beginning of the school year, and so last week we started back with our administrative retreat and doing some work with our administrative team, introducing all of the new members, taking some really heavy deep dives and looking at data, and getting ready for then meeting at the beginning of this week each of the building administrative teams with their building leadership teams. And then today and yesterday we had some work with new teachers. And then Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, all building staff are back doing preparation for the school year. But I wanted to share a few of the things that our inclusive education department shared with our administrative team as we were looking at some data. And, and I think this was very important for you to see. One of the things that we looked at were a few celebrations looking at our FastBridge data on reading and math, and some work that's happening at the high school, and what are things that we can be really proud about. And we have a lot of growth to do in our state assessments and in how kids are getting to grade level at all of our grades, particularly with the challenges of the last couple of years. But it is encouraging to see that when we measure students' growth from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, as you can see, in second grade, we had 70% of those students growing in the way that they should, and 84% in 7th grade, and in reading, 86% in Sandhill at second graders. And so some really good things happening, and we have a grad specialist really ensuring that kids are getting across the line at the high school. So there was some really good information to start with as we looked at some of the really hard to read data too. And I'm not going to steal Kyle's thunder. He's going to share all of that with you and what the plan is at a future meeting. But there are things that we can be proud of, and one of those things is the least restrictive environment data that we have. There is a requirement in the state of Washington that there's a national requirement. Students who receive special education services need to receive the services they receive in the least restrictive environment. As you know, that's a civil rights issue, and it needs to be addressed effectively. And Washington State has a goal that in all schools we will get to 80% of students' least restrictive environment would be 80 to 100. So there's 3 levels, and LRE1 is 80 to 100% of their time, even students with special needs, in the general education setting. LRE2 is 40% to 79%, and LRE3 is less than that, less than 39% or less. And the goal is to be at 80% by 2028. In 2028, the state expects that all school districts will have completed the transition to a fully different way of measuring students and serving students with special education needs. There will be no more discrepancy model. There will be no giving a student a test and saying their IEQ is this far below the average for the grade level, so we put them in special ed. It will be a skill-based process. We will, as we are doing in North Mason, measure students' skills and address those skills. We will not measure students and label them as this or that to be able to provide services. We will provide services to ensure that they have the skills that they need to be successful in school and in life. And that is a state requirement that we all transition to that. We have until 2028 to complete that transition. So one of the things that Kyle was wondering about and that he pulled together, and it's important to know too, the state adjusts our funding based on this. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, and you might think that the more intense the services that we are, the state would fund us more for. It's exactly the opposite.
Might not
We
surprise.
lose funding if we are not serving our kids according to the expectations in the general ed setting, because that is perceived then as restricting kids from what is their right to have, that general education exposure and exposure to the core curriculum. So when we have too many kids in LRE 2 or 3, we don't receive full special ed funding for the services we provide to those kids. So there's two things going there, and it's not that we want to not serve kids in a certain way because we need more money, but that's just a way to help us remember, are we doing the right things for kids? So when we meet with a family and do an IEP meeting, are we considering as a team how to best serve that student's needs in a way that allows them to be with their age peers the most they possibly can and be successful students? So that it's not an all or nothing either way, but it's asking us to really look at kids as differently than a label, but as kids who have needs that we need to address, and we have identified what those needs are, and this is how we're going to do it. And so what I think is really cool, so we have a statewide expectation that we get to 80% in LRE 1 by 2028, and you can see that North Mason School District and he just picked a few of our closest neighbors, so South Kitsap, Shelton Central, and North Kitsap and Bremerton. We are the closest to that percentage right now in how we serve our kids. Our efforts at multi-tiered systems of support, serving kids as they need to be in the whole child in our schools, are working, and I'm really proud of that.
That sounds important, like over the long run. I mean, this sounds like a major educational shift, am I right?
It is a huge educational shift. And it's scary, and staff, we do a lot of training because we have to learn how to do things differently. We don't necessarily pull kids out to a different room to do a reading group now. We figure out how do we serve the needs of those kids, if we can, with their like peers in the general ed setting first. Then consider other options if we determine that's not possible. And so, and you can see from the next slide that we have had a steady increase from 2018. So in the last 4 years, we are continuing to move toward that goal, and we're doing it slow and steady. And at this rate, we will meet the state's goal by 2028.
Very good.
Definitely. So, go ahead.
Quick question, so how do we measure the least restrictive environment for these kids? Is it they spend 80 to 100% of the time in general education, or how do we measure what is the least restrictive environment for them?
It's student specific. So you we collect all sorts of data on student performance and student skills. And then we looked at the skills that they need to accomplish. And we look at what resources, people, and other stuff we have to address that skill. And exactly what the student's needs are is measured by all the assessment data that we have. And then we determine for that student, for math, or for reading, or for social emotional learning, for that part of their day, then using all of that information, we determine what that student's least restrictive environment is for that thing.
Okay.
Okay? So there's no identifying, years ago, when I was in school, I still remember, when I think about special education, I always remember this. When I was in 1st and 2nd grade, I had a really close friend. We had a girl in our class that was really adored by everybody. And in the middle of 2nd grade, Lori wasn't at school anymore, because at that time, once the school determined that a student had special needs, and she was, she probably had a learning disability of some kind. I was a 1st grader, so she seemed just like the rest of us to me. But all of a sudden, she wasn't there anymore because they moved her to a school, a special school for kids with special needs, because they didn't get to stay in the public school setting with everybody else at that time. So we've had all this growth over time. And then we got to the place where we identified, well, this student has a specific learning disability, or this student is dyslexic, or this student, they used to use some words that are, really uncomfortable, or the student is retarded was used for a long time. So they used to use all these different kind of labels. And so we put kids in buckets, in labels, and say, all these kids in 3rd grade at this school fit this label, so they're gonna be in this classroom, or they're gonna go to resource room for this amount of the day. But it wasn't about what specific things did that kid need help with. It was about the group that they belonged to. So the transition in this process is moving away from looking at kids as part of a group and looking at kids as an individual, and what are their needs and what do we need to do about it. And so when that team of teachers and parents and school staff sit down and look at the data for the student, then they figure out together for which parts of the day does that student need which kinds of support. Do they need some kinds of support time part of the day where they're pulled out in a different small group setting? They might. They might not. They might be able to meet most of their needs within the general classroom. But that's what this process is about becoming completely individual in how we address the students' needs.
So what I'm understanding, instead of pulling them out completely or just throwing them straight, just throwing them in with everyone else in the general education classroom, you sit them down, figure out exactly what they need and exactly how they learn best, and then make a plan from there instead of just throwing them in the general classroom?
Yes.
Okay.
That is what the process is supposed to be.
Okay.
Isn't that a major change in the very nature of what it means to be a teacher?
It is, and it's a lot of work. And I'm very proud of our staff because they are just jumping into it and working really hard.
And that brings us to this slide, which describes exactly what needs to happen and the work that has to go on.
And so also, when we get to a different part of the day, the North Mason has been participating in OSPI's Inclusionary Practices Project. We're in our 3rd year of participation. We were in the 1st year of the project as well, to get support from the state in this transition, and it's support for professional development and other ways to help our staff get ready and be able to serve kids in a way that is different than what they're used to. And this year, and I shared with you previously, there are 3 board trainings on September 6th, 20th, and October 11th.
They're webinars, right?
They're webinars that will teach you all about the Inclusionary Practices Project and what this means for transitions in schools. And we've talked about we need to do, it's time to do another board retreat and start talking about some strategic planning shifts possibly. So I've asked that we wait to schedule that until after that 3rd of 3 opportunities, because they're all, each one is additional information. They're not watch one of them. It's please watch all 3 of them. And then after that, I'd like to look at October 15th on a Saturday morning for a board retreat to kind of get together and discuss and digest that information and talk about what that might mean to a new strategic planning process for North Mason School District. And
Well, I
getting
feel
our
as though there
community
ought to
engaged.
be some little book I could read. It seems to me the nature of the profession, it seems to me that the things you talked about fundamentally change the nature of the teaching profession. And it is so different if it were done according to the ways that you're talking about, that I don't think I have an accurate picture about what it means. And if there were a little book or pamphlet along teaching today that changes the contemporary educator or something like that, it would give me a different idea of the teaching profession.
Well, there are many books about the structures and the strategies and supports we're trying to put in place in our schools and that we could share with you. And I have some, I can send you home with something. But I think the first thing to do would be to watch those webinars.
Okay,
Because
all right.
we have the national, the people who are training nationally on things like Universal Design for Learning, which is the structure that is helping us guide all this work, will be presenting during those times. And so it would be really good for you to hear from them. And I can share some materials as well. But I think that's the best introduction that I can give you.
Will Jackie send us a reminder or something when the,
Yeah, they haven't sent us the links yet.
Okay.
And we will send those out as soon as we get them.
okay, well, thank you very much. This is very informative, and I feel like I just come off a very fast ride or something like that. It really requires some fundamental rethinking of the nature of the teaching profession.
It really does. And I can do nothing but commend and say how proud I am of our staff, because they have engaged in this work and making this transition. And sometimes it's harder than others, and sometimes it just feels overwhelming, but they are working really hard because it is the right thing to do for our students. It is the right thing that every child gets to be with their peers as much as they can, and that they get support in ways that doesn't make them feel other than the kids that they go to school with.
Well, all right. Let's hear it for the future. I mean, it sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Upcoming board letter columnist, John, you have August.
Yeah, and I'm completely ignorant. I mean, this is,
Well, maybe you could meet with
you know,
Janet.
if there were a little column on North Mason firsts, I mean, this meeting itself, it seems to me, would be a potpourri of various items that the public should know about.
Okay, maybe you could make an appointment with Dana. Yeah.
Check with our CEO.
Leanna has September, I have October, Arla has November, and Eric, you have December. So now we're at the assurance of organizational performance and policy review, the monitoring reports. The first one is the board superintendent relationship policies, and these are not monitored by this. She does not produce a monitoring report for this particular policy, but the table of contents include the board superintendent connection, the board as a unit, accountability of the superintendent, delegation of the superintendent, monitoring superintendent performance, annual superintendent evaluation in the form for that, the monitoring response, and the monitoring means. And those are clearly defined in the policy governance policies that are on the website as well. But we are responsible for monitoring this one as a board. The next one is Er1 Expectations of the Superintendent. And I think you have the monitoring report there, do you not?
Yes, she does.
Okay, have you all read her monitoring report?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to find that the superintendent's performance complies with ER1.
I defer to my colleagues.
I make a motion that the superintendent has met the expectations of ER1.
Okay. Is there any discussion, any comments on the monitoring report? Well, once again, a very thorough and complete report, and I appreciate the depth that you go to when you do write these. I don't have anything negative to say at all, just only positive, so there you go. If there's no other discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we find the superintendent's performance to comply with ER1. And now we are at ER3, treatment of parents, students, staff, and the public. Have you all had an opportunity to read that monitoring report?
Yeah.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we find the superintendent in compliance with the requirements for relationship between the public and the school.
Okay, is there any discussion? Any comments?
Well, I just think that this has been a very tough time, and that we're all still here is one measure that things have been handled very well.
I agree.
That's fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
And the board finds the superintendent's performance to comply with ER3. And now we are at ER4 Budget Planning. Okay. Have you had an opportunity to read the monitoring report for the budget planning?
Yes.
Yeah.
Are there any comments on that report? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to find the superintendent's
Compliant.
compliance with ER4 budget planning.
Okay. Any further discussion or any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we find the board, the superintendent's performance to comply with ER4 budget planning. Educational equity. Have you all had an opportunity to read that monitoring report?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we find the superintendent compliant with the requirements for equity.
All right. Any discussion, comments? Another very complete monitoring report. I appreciate all the information that you put in those. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the board finds the superintendent's performance to comply with E6, educational equity. And now we are at policy review. These four policies we discussed last month, so it's just a basic discussion. If there's anything else you want to find, we found them all to be in compliance. And we have a new policy or a revised policy, GP 8E3, executive or closed sessions. This is based on House Bill 1329, open public meetings, various provisions that WASDA has revised the following model policy. Have you all had an opportunity to review that policy?
Yeah, and it looks like it's law, so.
Okay. I don't believe this requires our action. Okay.
We're pretty much in compliance. I mean, there's nothing new there for us.
There were just a few words that changed
I
for
see.
you guys in that one.
Not many. And GP 14 for meetings, public notices, quorum, meeting conduct, order of business, and public comment. This was the one that referred to firearms and nunchucks.
No, that was a policy. In the
over in the
consent
other
agenda.
area. Okay.
No, this is the one that, during COVID, we had to the board, remember, had to
Yes.
pass a resolution to allow us to meet online or differently.
Right.
And what this does is it adds language that says in the case of any kind of an emergency, the board can choose then to move to meeting not in person, as
Yeah.
long as we follow all of the open
Uh-huh.
public meeting rules, and could choose to have, if you need to go back to remote meetings. And so it just adds that language into the policy rather than having to do a separate action. It sets up in advance that you've given yourselves the ability to do that.
Okay. So we are at adjournment. Good of the order. Does anybody have anything they would like to offer right now, informational-wise? I'll start off. There's going to be a fill the bus activity that the Transportation Department has routinely, or in the past, they have organized that, and I know that I know a couple of the people that are really involved and have gone around and put it on all of the reader boards in town. But now they're going to go take pictures of the reader boards and post it on the Belfair Community Network that all of these places are supporting Fill the Bus. So,
All right.
yeah, so it's pretty exciting, and I'm really thrilled and thankful that they do that. So if any of you are rolling through Belfair on Saturday, look for that big bus out by QFC, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. They'll be taking money, they'll be taking donations, somebody's doing face painting down there, I think. So you can get your face painted if you want to, but that's my comment. Eric, got anything?
I have heard the football that Edie talked about, the football over with the parents. I know there's a lot of excitement from the new parents that were coming out there, the kids out there late at night cooking the kids breakfast.
Oh, nice.
Thankful for all the parents coming out and supporting that. It was really awesome to see the feedback there.
Yeah, super.
I found this meeting to be one of those educational that I can remember. There's just been a number, if we were taking notes, which I don't because they immediately become public documents. If I'd been taking notes, there are any number of things, I mean, I would guess 5 or 6, that are North Mason firsts that people ought to know about. Our buses are hard to beat, and they just keep on scoring with this fill the bus, sort of thing. And then what we've learned about fundamental changes in education and what we've learned about our scoring on, special needs or equity or whatever. I mean, those are just 3, off the top of my head. And I just think that we're living in exciting times in a non-negative sense. Amidst all the brouhaha about education and COVID and everybody's being dumbed down and this kind of thing, I think there is under the electricity and fireworks that's going on the surface, on the ground, there are some very fundamental things of a positive nature that are happening, and I think that people should know about, and it might change their attitudes toward the schools. I'm feel very privileged just to have been present at this meeting and be able to participate in the discussion.
Thank you, John. Morgan?
I just had, before I get to what I had to say, I just had a quick question about the buses as far as next year. They were very packed and consolidated this year, and the routes were a lot longer. Will the buses be opening up and the routes shrinking more?
Not to start the year. We had some retirements, and we had, as you know, a very limited number of subs in our transportation department. We have a class in training right now with 5 new bus drivers in it. And so when that class finishes training and meets all of their requirements, then Maureen and Jackie will be able to look at bringing back some of the other routes that we had before and some of those longer routes getting shortened again. But at the beginning of the year, we'll have the same routes we ended the year with.
Okay, do we know exactly when they will start?
No, we don't.
Yeah, okay.
So, Morgan, the process it's very convoluted. It's one of the things that happens with education in Washington that makes all of us tear our hair out. But in order to become a qualified bus driver, and you will step in when I say the wrong thing if I do, they go through a class. There are some hours behind the wheel and practice with another driver and those kinds of things. There's a very intense test you have to pass, and you have to, you can't like paraphrase. If you get one word wrong, you just failed that question. So it's very, very intensive. And then you have a driving test, right? With a person that there are only a few in the state. There's only one person in our region that for anybody that wants to get qualified as a bus driver. Did I get wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll try and paraphrase real quick. They start out, they have to do basically 40 hours in the classroom going over the theory of what it is to drive a bus full of students and the liabilities and everything around that. Then they have to pass 4 written tests with the Department of Licensing and they have to pass a medical physical, in order to get their permit to get behind the wheel. Then they have to do several hours behind the wheel practicing how to drive the 40-foot bus that doesn't bend in the middle. And then they have a 5 to 7 page script that they have to memorize in order to then go take their test. And the first part of the test is reciting that script. And then if you miss too many points there, you're done. You can't even go do the drive test. You just are done. And then they get to take the drive test. Once they've completed the drive test, here in North Mason, we have an extensive training program because we want our drivers to be fully comfortable and everything. So part of their training is also riding with the bus drivers on the routes and seeing how our students act and behave and how our drivers interact with our students, and also where our buses go. Then once they have their license, then they go and they drive with a driver after they have completed solos where we give them keys to the bus and they go out and they practice some of our more difficult turnarounds that we have in this district. And they practice all of those areas. So then they go and after they've completed their drive with a driver, then they're finally cleared to drive with students by themselves.
So we're looking at a few month process.
Yes, they have started the process. We've got a couple that are already permitted, so that's great news. They've already got their permits. 3 out of the 5 in the class already have permits. And they just finished the theory portion of their training last week. So that's great progress, and it's potential that they could be licensed by the end of October. But the other hang-up, like Dan was saying, is the Department of Licensing has not cleared the testers. So there's people that took the training to be third-party testers in December that have not been cleared to be a tester yet.
Okay.
And so we have 2 in our area that we can use. And one is an assistant director of transportation and one has another full-time job. So fitting into their schedules is difficult.
And they would serve this whole area?
Yeah, they serve all of the peninsula.
Oh,
and they do, and a drive test takes 3 to 4 hours.
Oh. So there you have it.
It's an intense process.
So hopefully sometime this year we will have more routes.
Yeah.
That is our goal.
Maybe by Christmas, and get your Christmas present for the
Maybe,
kids.
yeah.
Okay, and then the other question I did have, it's not super important, but when we were reading through that questionnaire that you submitted to OSPI, I saw something about a climate survey in there along with the social emotional one. What does that entail?
You know, you take it's part of FastBridge. I'm going to not remember the acronym for the social emotional test. Do you remember that, Dan?
Savers.
Savers, yes, thank you.
Yeah. We use Savers for that. The Savers survey that the students are asked to take at the high school during homeroom this year, probably 3 times a year.
3 times a year.
And this time we're telling the teachers that it's not optional. The students cannot want to do it. They will answer the questions.
Okay.
Because we need that information.
So that does the social emotional learning part and the climate part?
That's part of it, yeah.
Okay.
Then once we have that data, from kids saying how they're feeling. Then the other part of the social emotional is we have to have a plan to
Deal with it.
deal with that and help kids with those things, but yeah.
Okay, I'll pay more attention next time I take it, because I don't remember any of that.
Thank you.
Also, it would be helpful in your leadership position in the high school if you could encourage kids to take that test seriously and answer those questions truthfully and honestly, because sometimes they just blow it off and put something in there that they think is funny.
Yeah. And half the time, at least with the Savers test, the program isn't the friendliest, isn't the most user-friendly. So we spend 15 minutes or half an hour homeroom period just trying to get into the survey.
Yeah,
So-
and they've worked on some of that stuff, so it shouldn't take that much time to do that part this year,
Yeah.
so.
And then the last thing I had, this is just kind of a general statement to the public. I did mention this earlier during my portion because it's not directly affiliated for the high school, but it's the Young Eagles event I've been harping on. I did find out the times for it. It is 9 to 12, ages 8 to 17 to go up and fly, and then 1 to 3 p.m. for kids younger than 8. So, and that's weather permitting, but if the weather is nice, you'll be able to get up, you'll be able to get introduced to general aviation and get started on your path, whether you want to do it commercially or just for fun. It's a great way to start out.
Very good.
Thank you.
And that's
Thank you.
all I have.
All right, the board self-assessment of the meeting. Oh, by the way, Director Shepherd-Bull and Director Krotzer are excused tonight. General meeting behavior. The agenda was well planned. It focused on the real work of the board. The board followed its agenda. Board members prepared for and contributed to the meeting. The meeting proceeded without interruptions or distractions. The board's deliberations and decision-making processes were public. Participation was balanced. All participated, no one dominated. Members listened attentively, avoiding side conversations, which is kind of hard since we're so far apart here, but it worked. Work was conducted in an atmosphere of trust and openness, and meeting participants treated each other with respect and courtesy. And I gave every one of those items a satisfactory. Do you all agree? All right. Governance principles review. These principles were followed, yes, I said. Board actions occur at the policy level rather than at the operational level. The board reviews policy about each topic before discussing that issue in writing additional policies, which we really didn't do tonight, but we did discuss 2 new policies that came to us from WASDA that were revised. So I'm going to say that that was it. The board minimizes time spent monitoring past performance, which is why I'm talking so fast here. And the board routinely dedicates time to reviewing, improving its own process. The board clarifies priorities, values when considering potential outcomes, beneficiaries, and costs of outcomes. The board follows an annual calendar based on a plan for doing its work. The board chair helps the board efficiently conduct its meeting. The board spends most of its time deliberating issues, defining and clarifying its vision, and linking with its community as opposed to fixing things. The board supports the superintendent in any reasonable interpretation of its policies. And I said yes to all of those. Do you all agree?
Yes.
Okay, overall, satisfactory. So I'm done with that. All right, the next board meeting date is September 15th at 6:30 p.m. right here. And the meeting is adjourned. And thank you all for coming. And welcome to the whole crowd, Ray. We're just really happy to have you.